Hi, I'm Dave Peck, Vice President of Exploration and Business Development for Metals Corp. Metals is a junior explorer and developer in Canada with projects in Ontario and Manitoba, really focused on the battery metal space, which is well-timed for current environment, and also with projects at different stages of development. So I'll be able to give you a good overview today and look forward to sharing some new information on our projects in Canada.
Dave, thank you very much for the introduction. You say new information. It's all new to me. You know, it's the first time I've really looked at the company. Thank you very much. You sent over an incredibly comprehensive kind of data pack with a kind of review of your project, which is really great to see. But I think before we kind of get stuck into the kind of the full detail, you've got 4 main projects. 3 of them are lithium, 3 of them are nickel, and 1 of them is lithium. Yes. Could you talk a little bit about how the portfolio came together and what stage those 4 projects are at, please?
So just a bit of background for me. I joined the company a couple of years ago, having left North American Palladium as one of the 3 in senior management that led to the sale of that company to Impala Platinum at the end of 2019 for $1 billion. So I'm sort of coming into it, inheriting some projects that have been with the company for many, many years. So and then there's been some additions since I joined, some that I did and some that my colleague, our CEO and President, Robin Dunbar, he and I worked together on. So it's kind of a mixed bag in terms of the legacy, but we can start with a couple of the core projects, which are our flagship property in Manitoba and southeastern Manitoba, not far from where I live, Makwa Mayville. That's about an hour-and-a-half drive from Winnipeg, and that's nickel dominant. In the same belt, we have a lithium project that the company acquired from Tanco Mine, which is actually Canada's only producing lithium mine at the moment, which is in the same belt in southeastern Manitoba, the Bird River Greenstone Belt. Mm-hmm. That was acquired through a transaction with Tanco in around 2016, and really hadn't had a lot of work done on it until just recently. In fact, we put out a news release this morning with some exciting new exploration results from that lithium property. And then the projects in Ontario, East Bow Lake, which we spent a lot of time on since I joined in 2020, early 2020. A lot of drilling, a lot of news, really focused on palladium. That one has been in the company for almost 22 years now.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so we've been able to hold on to projects through multiple cycles. And although that can be a little bit confusing or perhaps even frustrating for investors that are coming in on a specific kind of metal cycle or commodity, that gives us a really excellent flexibility in terms of moving these things forward at the right time in the cycle. I'm all about portfolios and managing portfolios, maintaining excellence, both in the geology and technical merit, but also the timing of those projects to market conditions. And we're able to apply this flexibility in our portfolio of 4, as you mentioned, top projects. Sorry, the other one I forgot to mention is our Timmins area nickel project called Bannockburn. Yeah, that's also been with the company for over 22 years, having been purchased from Outokumpu around 2000. And again, it had a sort of stop and start based on nickel prices, which all of us in the nickel business suffered through. But we're in a really fantastic time for nickel, and the outlook being really strong based on the new demand actually for battery metal nickel. So that's really changed the nickel market, which was always about stainless steel, as you know. Yeah. So we're able to hold these projects. They're all large properties. There's lots of potential on the exploration side. Some have known resources, like our Makwa Mayville project in Manitoba. It's at the PEA stage, with about 40 million tons combined, around just under 1% nickel equivalent on the one project, and about 1% copper equivalent on the copper rich project, which is Mayville. So these things we can hold on to at very low holding costs. All the projects are selected in areas that are either established mining camps or have excellent infrastructure. They tick all the ESG boxes. And again, I managed huge portfolios of projects with Anglo American in my days with them, 2002 to 2010, when I got to globetrot and do all the things that a commodity leader does, evaluate projects. And those portfolios, the concept of project turnover is vital, and you have to have the funds to do it. So with the small cap company that I'm with now, that's always the key part of the strategy, is bringing those funds in at the right time. But we're really gearing up. We've got a decent amount of cash in the till, and we're able to move our flagship project forward now. There were a couple of years where we had to take our time, get a negotiation done with the local First Nation, and that's now in place. So that was one of the last sort of impediments to moving that project forward. So yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, could I just kind of jump in there? So you had 8 or so years with Anglo American. Were you in the nickel PGM space, or were you across all commodities?
I was a global commodity leader for nickel for the exploration division based out of Vancouver, but basically spent most of my time on airplanes, as you probably are doing as well, Merlin. So we saw all the great deposits in the world. I was looking at sulfide and laterite nickel. And we made some terrific discoveries on the nickel sulfide side, and brought a couple of laterite projects towards production in that time frame. But I also worked closely with my colleagues in Anglo Platinum, and spent a fair amount of time in South Africa working on the Plat Reef in the Bushveld complex with them, and also on global projects. Yeah.
Did you get up to Finland? Did you get to look at Sakari? Is that the one?
Well, that was my first pick as a target for the country manager at the time. And they ended up finally getting onto that, getting some geophysics and drilling. And of course, it became a terrific discovery. So I was definitely involved in that project, yes.
Okay, so that was part of your target generation, your kind of project generation.
Yes.
And it's interesting because it's funny how some of the big companies are siloed. You've got the kind of the Anglo Platinum, which of course has got its own nickel and cobalt, and it's a multi-element producer. And then you've got the Anglo-American side of things, which is perhaps looking at the nickel PGM suite. North American Palladium, again, it's not just pure palladium, is it? There's a kind of there's a suite of metals that comes together geologically. Especially now with the Impala Platinum winning North American Palladium. So yeah, they really are focused on palladium dominantly at the Lac du Bonnet mine, but they do produce nickel, cobalt, nickel, copper, platinum, and gold as well. And I mean, it's a hell of a jump from Anglo-American to Grid Metals. It's a completely different culture and a completely different approach. Your market capitalization's 20 million Canadian. Yes. What's your cash position, sir? I didn't see that. We've got about after this current phase of drilling at Makwa Mayville, will be at about 5 million. So we started the year strongly with a $6 million deal with Lithium royalty on the lithium assets, the Larder Lake project in Manitoba and our Campus Creek project in northwestern Ontario. So that deal was announced in January, closed shortly after, and brought in 6.5 million Canadian. So that really benchmarked our ability to plan for more than 3 months at a time here. Yeah. Fantastic, transformational deal. Yeah. It's funny that you got the lithium asset in 2016, because there was snowballs. It would almost be impossible to prize out a near mine lithium asset in 2021, 2022 from a producing lithium company. I mean, it's that's obviously hit the sweet spot in terms of the timing. It's really come good for you. Let's focus on the flagship. Okay. It's fantastic that you've got all this kind of other potential and you've got the leverage, but let's just, could you talk me through Makwa Mayville? And, I saw that you've got these two different resources, but it might be useful to pull up the slide sure. that shows the two different ore bodies and
All right, so I can walk you through just the setting here. There's actually 3 properties now. We've included the lithium on this map, which is interestingly situated directly south of our Mayville or M2 copper deposit, copper nickel PGM.
Yeah.
That's an open pit resource that was drilled out in the sort of mid to late 2000s, became the subject of a PEA study in 2014. And it really hasn't had a lot of work done since then because of the metal cycle and the downturn at that time in both nickel and copper prices. So that one's been waiting to move forward. And then we've got the Makwa project in the south. It's actually a past producing nickel sulfide mine. There was both an underground mine and an open pit mine operated by Falconbridge, or a subsidiary of Falconbridge, in the early 70s. And again, a couple million tons taken out of the ground, over 1% nickel grade. It was a bit of a swing producer, but of course, nickel prices at that time were around a couple $1 a pound. So not like we are looking at today. So
So was that an underground development in the 70s?
Yeah, there were 2 mines. The Dumbarton mine was one style of mineralization on that property. And it was an underground decline. And then the Makwa open pit, which is really where most of our resources sit in that project now. A very shallow open pit. They only went down a few benches. They only took out a few 100,000 tons.
So they've effectively done the pre-stripping for you.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it, and we do. So we've got a really unique situation. I mean, I guess I can understand some hesitancy with some investors saying, well, you've got too much, or, you've got lithium in one hand and nickel, and it's a bit confusing. But if you look at the geography, this explains exactly what our strategy is. We have the dominant land position for nickel in what's called this Bird River Greenstone Belt in southeast Manitoba. And again, the infrastructure is excellent. These are all weathered roads here. Terrific site infrastructure, being a past producing mine at Makwa. There's the Tanko mine, which is owned by Sino Mine. There's a shipment of spodumene concentrate. That picture was taken by our VP of lithium exploration, Kerry Gallister, a couple of months ago. So this is the only spodumene producer in Canada at the moment. This mine's been in operation for over 50 years. Almost 50 years.
Is that a pegmatite?
Yeah, so it's a world-class pegmatite in terms of the size and grade. It's called the Lac Lake Pegmatite. And it has supported tantalum, cesium, and now lithium mining for, I guess, since the late 1960s. It used to be owned by Cabot Corporation, a U.S. firm. It was sold to Sinomine recently. It's a Chinese company that is basically shipping the spodumene back to China, all the way to the West Coast by truck or rail, and then off to China. So, we've got an opportunity to maybe build a center for spodumene mining here, but you can imagine the synergies between having a sort of a nickel copper PGM battery metals focused project and a lithium project moving in lockstep towards development on a shortened time frame. With the potential, we actually have an offtake agreement with Sinomine. So they would buy whatever product we wanted to sell them at commercial terms at fair market value. So that's quite an advantage. It means we may not have to build a concentrator for making spodumene concentrate at Donner Lake, the lithium property.
What stage is your understanding of the Donner Lake pegmatite or resource there?
Very, very advanced. In fact, if you look at the press release out from this morning, maybe I can just flip to that map, and then maybe we go back off the map here.
Yeah.
Just take 2 seconds. There's the known dikes on the property. This is a zoom in on the east side of the Donner Lake property. These are the known dikes, sort of what we inherited when we got the property. We knew about all of these dikes. They hadn't been drilled since the 50s. In fact, there was a company called Viola Mac, who was a famous Canadian entrepreneur in the mining industry, Viola McMillan, that drilled out a 4 million ton imperial ton resource at 1.28% lithium on two of the dikes, this one here, the Northwest, and the main dike. But now we've gone back and subsequently done an initial round of validation drilling on the main dike in 2018. It was highly successful, and it proved that this vertical dike has got very consistent and good lithium oxide grade, averaging around 1.6% over a few meters. And then the Northwest dike, we just finished our first round of exploration drilling on that. We've extended the strike length quite a bit, doubled it in fact, and it's now open to depth as well, below 200 meters. Another vertical dike, it's a bit wider than the main dike. So just on those two dikes alone, we see the potential, and this is based on fairly recent information, to get up to 8 million tons, metric tons of 1.5% approximately lithium oxide, which would put us in the same space as some of the high market cap lithium companies on the ASX, Core Lithium, for example. It's a similar scale to that. So we're not far away from having that initial compliant resource, 43101 resource. So probably by the end of the year, we'd be able to have all that drilling done to move that into resource. The other thing to note is this is happy hunting grounds for lithium and, the so-called LCT, or lithium cesium tantalum rich highly evolved pegmatites. By example, the Larder Lake pegmatite that supports the Tanko mine to the south of us, same geology, same environment. We've got about 8 kilometers of unexplored contact between this big granite in the south and this greenstone belt in the north. This is where we started. We're going to move west and explore. We expect to find more dikes. These usually occur in swarms or fields with closely spaced dikes. So I think the tonnage potential here is really fantastic, and we have that advantage.
Could you just go back to the other, the kind of the regional map?
There we go.
Yeah. And show me where that on that map. Can you point with your mouse to where where that previous map was? Right, so it's in there. Yeah. And so the 8 kilometer contact that you're talking about is that
this one here.
Is it? And
there's a scale bar here down here.
Okay, so and the dikes are within the greenstone belt, but
right on the contact. Yeah.
So they're related to the granite, the plutonic rocks, but they're
we
inside.
Think so. Yes. We think it is related to this big batholith, but that hasn't been proven. But it seems to be the case. It's quite serendipitous if all the dikes are developed right at that contact. So.
And sorry, just because normally when I think of a greenstone belt, I think of granite greenstone. I think of intrusions within the greenstone belt. So perhaps the undifferentiated plutonic rocks on the outside are not genetically related to the dikes. I mean, but you're saying that is. Sorry, I wasn't thinking things through. But are you comfortable that you've got the exploration handle? So when you're exploring for these lithium pegmatites, what do you what are your tools? What's in your toolbox? Do they stick out of the ground? Do you stub your toe on them, or what do you use?
Yeah, I mean, this is a typical Canadian shield kind of topography. So there's some rolling hills. There's a reasonable outcrop. So you can find them mapping. They do tend to form prominent ridges or topographic highs. So that part of it is the easy part, just boots on the ground, keep your eyes open, systematic mapping. We also can use high quality air photography to enhance the ability to see these small outcrops in the bush. That's another tool. Lithogeochemistry is a big tool for us, and it's something our VP, Carrie Galischuk, has worked on and written papers about for many years. He's actually an expert in this particular belt, as well as a global lithium exploration expert. So he's got lots of discoveries under his belt. He knows how to do it. He worked at the Tanko mine for many years. So he really knows the belt.
Does he do relationships? I mean, is it kind of minor element relationships? It's
actually lithium itself is the most mobile of these rare metals that occur in these dikes, and it travels the furthest away from the dike. So we can see a lithium anomaly building up for 100, 200 meters away from major dikes. And so even if they're not exposed, you can pick up the signature of them in the country rock, which in this case are the greenstones. They're mainly basalts, metavolcanics, amphibolites. And, the anomalies really jump out. Like there is already data over this main dike area that Kerry actually worked on when he was with Tanko, and they had the property. And there's some fantastic lithium anomalies that haven't even been tested yet. And that's just in that core area on the east end where we know where the sort of some of the dikes are.
And do you have a preferential orientation of the dikes so that you can plan your soil lines perpendicular to that or orthogonal as best as you can?
Correct. Yeah. So the general strike, as you can see in that map, was about, let's call it northeast striking, and, pretty much vertical dip. And, there's another set of dikes that appear to be developing on more an east-west strike. So that's the structural pattern that was in place in this greenstone belt when these dikes were injected into these structures. So there's two main trends. So we will be planning both our ground geochemical sampling, but also the high density mag. We plan to do a drone mag survey this spring. Kerry's had some really good luck with that in mapping out the structures. If the dikes are big enough, they could even show up as mag lows, very intense mag lows. With that drone mag. So we'll be trying that out, a bit of an orientation study over this sort of main dike area, and then expanding from there if we see the value in it. And I think we will. Well,
there we go. So that's us trying to talk about the nickel and the copper and ending up talking about the lithium. No, what an interesting story. And I was going to ask about mag, because mag is famous for being able to pick up structures. And it's really interesting you say that when the dike is big enough and intense enough, it would appear as a mag low. So with the lithogeochem, do you have till cover? I mean, how much till cover have you got there? Or is it?
It's variable. We've got swamps and bogs, typical Canadian shield, but there's also lots of high ground and decent exposure. I guess the sort of the overburden thickness is from nil to maybe, a few meters. Rarely more than a few meters.
And your field seasons, can you work in the winter, or was it a summer?
The drilling is actually best done in winter, but we can drill all year round. We had a horrible winter this year, so there's a lot more snow than normal, and it's all got to melt, and it'll go into the low areas and make it harder to get around. But we've got sort of all-terrain vehicles, and we're looking at getting some Argos and things to get in through the swampy areas and get our people around pretty much any time of year. But summer is definitely the preferred time for mapping and doing the soil sampling. So it does get quite cold here in the winter.
Do you have any mosquitoes in the summer?
Oh, just a few, yeah. And ticks. That's the other one. There's lots of ticks.
And does it come with tick bite fever? What's the
Lyme disease?
Lyme disease.
Yeah, that's prevalent. It's something you have to watch out for. There are various preventative measures there. Basically, the end of the day tick inspection is probably the best bet.
It's what the compass clinometer is so good for.
That's right. Yeah.
Checking the groin area.
Did you want to talk about the nickel a bit more?
Yeah. Let's get back to the nickel.
So, these are sort of Makwa and Mayville. They're both conventional magmatic sulfide deposits. Mayville's copper rich, so it's more fractionated. It's hosted in peroxenitic rocks and gabbros. It's in a big layered intrusion called the Mayville intrusion, right at the basal contact, where we normally see these things. I would say that the structural understanding of the ore body is still evolving. And, one of my goals in the next few months is to really tear the deposit apart with all the drill holes we have, build really good 3D models, geochemical profiles, and and work out if there's a real structural control to the mineralization. It's not massive generally. It's more kind of net textured to blebby, disseminated. So it's not super high sulfide content. Makwa is the nickel-rich deposit. It's also in the same intrusive complex called the Bird River Sill, and it's in the ultramafic component right at the base, in contact with generally with greenstones, metavolcanic rocks. And it does seem to be structurally controlled, and it's more massive, but again, it's not, pure massive sulfide. It's not like a Voisey's Bay, for instance, or some of the Sudbury ore bodies. It tends to be more stringer sulfide or even blebby, weakly net textured. So, kind of averaging 10% sulfide minerals, mostly pentlandite, pyrrhotite, chalcopyrite.
Can you trace a kind of a stratigraphy across the sill? Was it a folded structure? I couldn't quite tell from that map.
Well, that's a very good point, actually. There may be very tight isoclinal folding, which offers some potential for structural repetition of this basal contact deposit at Makwa anyway. And that theory is yet to be fully tested. We basically need to do lithogeochemical sampling using the existing pulps from historical drill holes, get profiles across and see if we see a reversal in the what we call the younging direction or facing direction, which way was up in the intrusion. And we're planning to do that this spring. That'll really help us understand the potential for structural repeats, because all the drilling's really been focused on that basal contact, and it's possible it may be fold repeated to the south. In fact, there's some geophysical trends that are quite intriguing that we're looking at now for our next round of exploration. That may be that. Yeah.
When was it last drilled?
We just finished our first exploration drill program there for at least a decade, more than a decade. And we drilled 18 holes. We just finished actually last week. So it's a winter drill program. And the real focus on that program was testing geophysical targets, conductors of good size. They're all 300, 400, 500 meters of strike length and good vertical extent that sit around the known resources. So we got 7 million tons that were outlined in 2014 in an open pit shell, optimized pit shell. It graded about 0.64% nickel and almost, just under % nickel equivalent. Good palladium credits with that nickel. That's one of the strong points for Makwa, is if you basically have a 1-to-1 correlation. If you get a % nickel, you get over a gram of palladium. So the higher the nickel, the higher the palladium. So that adds a lot of value. But these targets all sit around the edges below that pit shell, adjacent to it. So we're looking to see if there's significant blue sky at Makwa. So that's the stage we're at. But we're also moving both the Makwa and Mayville through another set of internal iterations. Things have changed since 2014. That's a long time ago. Metal prices are up for most of the base metals there. We've got a better FX and improved metallurgy.
Remember that in 2013-14, they were the mood in the sector was so depressed, and it was just everything was kind of, you could just hear the bathwater draining out. It was like it was just dreadful time. Everything would have had to have been planned to be the most, just kind of save money. You couldn't raise capital for love nor money. Exploration companies were doing everything to take shortcuts. I'm not advocating waste in any under any circumstance, but it's a very different environment now. We've got to plan for the future. You've got to plan ahead. You've got to look for long life assets. You've got to kind of see where you can get started on a nickel project, but actually give it some run room.
We have technically, very good projects for a junior company of our size, that we have this many large and prospective projects. So that's my fundamental belief, is having technically excellent projects with lots of blue sky, and actually the team to be successful in making discoveries, which I've been involved in many successful teams and Kerry has as well. And we think technically we stand up against any of our peers. And so that's a big edge. We got to get that message out to and show it, prove it. Proof's in the pudding. The drill is one thing, but having the results to say, well, you've made a new discovery at Makwa or at Mayville or in some of our other projects. That's where I get all my fun from in this business. It's not necessarily the marketing side.
That speaks a technically driven guy, but that's fine because the marketing, the more success you have, the easier the marketing gets.
Yeah, that's right.
Tell me, I don't want to force you to put out a news release after we do this interview. So please don't share anything which is not in the public domain.
For sure.
I got two questions. One is you were just about to describe the internal work that you're doing, kind of rescoping Mayville Makwa, and the second is, can you give me an update on how your 18-hole drill program intersected or didn't intersect the extensions of your system?
Yeah, so the first question, let's go through the project plan. And we've got a project manager now. His name's Ian Ward. He used to run Micon Engineering. A very experienced guy. He's run through many feasibility studies and, as I said, managed Micon. It's an internationally renowned engineering firm in the mining sector. So happy to have Ian rejoin us. Actually, he's with the company on a part-time basis before. So he's running the project. We are going to start baseline environmental work this summer at both Mayville and Makwa. That's the first step towards getting environmental permits and approvals from the Manitoba government. We're also looking at making the project higher grade and smaller than what was envisaged in 2014. So some of those internal calculations are really on what's the optimum size of pit for both projects, and is there an underground opportunity as well down the road, So that internal work's ongoing, and if successful, we think it will be, that the project will look a lot better just with what we already know than it did in 2014. Probably catch some eyes, I think. Then we would restart the PEA and basically redo it using current long-term prices and FX assumptions. And with improved metallurgy, that's the one thing that we're able to do since 2014 is more work on cobalt recoveries, nickel recoveries, and showing a much better set of numbers than what was used in the 2014. So I think that's a 3-year plan.
Sorry, there are two comments on that. One is you say if you can right size the pit and the potential underground, you said it might improve the economics and it might catch people's eye. Mm-hmm. And then you'd go onto a PEA, but you won't be able to publish anything unless you do a PEA. So, how will you communicate your rescoping of it without doing a PEA?
Well, we can't. So maybe I misunderstood or misled you there a little bit. That's internally. We will know that it's going to be a positive PEA. Okay, so that's the trigger point for us internally.
Okay.
And so we're working with Micon right now. Yeah.
Okay, so it's the board of directors, their eyes will light up, and then they will there'll be a board level decision to say, right, we go ahead for the PEA because this is looking good. Yeah. Okay, good. And also in the last when I speak to my metallurgist friends, I as a geologist, I have a few of those.
Me too.
I've been told that the reagents and the metallurgical recoveries have improved enormously just in the last 10 years. And that when you go back and if you look to the metallurgy of this, is that, how much of a rethink is it doing, or is it just kind of incremental gain on various kind of reagents that you're looking at?
At the feasibility stage, which we hope to get to fairly quickly. But first step, let's do the PEA this year, get that out before hopefully the end of the year. We think we can do it. That kind of revisiting of the flow sheet, the recoveries, the bench tests, maybe even some bulk sample tests, that would come in at the PFS stage.
Yeah.
So we're pretty happy with the general quality of the work that's been done in the past. So I should say Makwa was actually at the sort of feasibility stage in 2007. So it kind of dropped down to PEA stage because it got combined with Mayville. And it made sense to look at a central concentrator at the bigger project, Mayville, and the higher grade Makwa feed would go by truck to Mayville concentrator and produce two separate cons, a copper con and a nickel con. And that work, the metallurgy for that was strong, but I said there were specific tests done to answer some questions on Mayville, specifically on nickel and also cobalt. So that's been done. There's definitely scope for more. We will be drilling holes for future met testing on both projects over the coming months. So that is in the plans.
Okay, I know it hasn't been approved at the board level yet, but in terms of if you internal discussions, you're looking at kind of a PEA sometime next year.
I think we would potentially start the PEA in a couple of months. We're that close. Yeah. Okay. And maybe the goal is to finish it before the end of the year.
Okay. Well, I'm
aspirational.
Aspirational. I'm not gonna hold your feet to the fire about this, but
we have mentioned it to our investors in various press releases over the last year that this is part of the strategy. It was just really on the exact timing of it that we were still kind of mulling it over what was best for the company. So I think we're basically there now. Okay,
great. Now let's go to the 18 holes that you've drilled. Did it prove up your thesis? Is there room for expansion? Are you going to kind of expand your pit shells, your resource calculations? You know, is there going to be another round of drilling, which is going to be a mix of infill and expansion?
Yeah. So I mean, like you said, we can't get into too much detail because only one hole has been reported. So that's the current lag, as you know, in the analytical labs around the world is just getting worse and worse. So we have some expectation we'll have most of the results in our hands within a couple of months, but it may even go longer than that. So all the core is, basically it's finished. Logging, sampling's been done. We kind of know visually what we've seen. We do use the Niton portable XRF to actually, get a handle on the nickel, especially in copper grades through the mineralized intervals. You know, we've had generally good visuals on the holes we drilled. We tested 4 different geophysical targets, and I think we're pretty happy with what we've seen so far, but proof's in the pudding, so I don't want to get into speculation too much. We did announce one hole. We hit a little bit of massive sulfide with up to 1.5% nickel and a couple of, call it seams. And that was in underneath the old Dumbarton mine, the underground workings. That was never drilled off to depth. And so that was, a big step out vertically below those old workings, which only went down 150 meters. And we had a big, strong conductor that went for 400 or 500 meters right underneath that. And it looks like it's going to hang together. It's still there anyway. Like, we'll see what the average grade and continuity is. We drilled about 7 holes under that target. So that's just one aspect of, the upside at Makwa. The other 3 conductors were more tied to that open pit, the Makwa, where our current resources really sit underneath the old open pit. And those are adjacent or underneath that pit shell. And again, looks pretty interesting, but let's see what the assays say.
You said it was an fractionated magmatic system. Can you see from the Niton? Can you see the whole rock geochemistry? Can you tell when you're in which series, or is it just visual? Can you see what?
Yeah,
when you're into the zone.
Yeah, so it's basically a sort of a dunite peridotite package at the bottom, the ultramafic basal sequence, and an overlying gabbro. An orthositic gabbro sequence. So white rock, black rock, basically. Yeah. And then there are some peroxenitic units in there. There's some chromatite seams as well. In fact, the Bird River sill was Canada's only chromite resource during the Second World War. So it has a little bit of history on the chromite side of things too.
Okay, thank you. I mean, we've covered a lot of ground there. I think really when it comes to Makwa Mayville, it'll be a case of waiting for those 18 holes to come through, and then seeing how you progress towards a new refreshed PEA and with the metallurgical test work and a kind of a rethinking there. The lithium, it sounds as if you've got a really exciting program there. I mean, I do love my nickel, but it's also great to have the lithium. We haven't really got time to talk about Bannockburn and East Bull, but do you want to just mention them really briefly? Just kind of talk about kind of at a high level what they are.
Yeah, East Bull is again a big layered complex, about 20 kilometers long. It sits in a fantastic location, right on the same contact that the Sudbury Igneous Complex sits on. It's older, so it's not the same magmatic event, but it's really similar in terms of the geology, geochemistry. And now from our 2 years of drilling, we think it has significant massive sulfide potential. So stay tuned, the investors that came in on the Palladium story. We have not lost interest or excitement about the project. We had to take some time, rethink the plan, rethink our model, and that's been done now. So we'll be communicating a longer term plan on East Bull. Bannockburn, it's really like the Crawford nickel. So if you're interested in seeing what we're up to there, you read about Canada Nickel's Crawford nickel project. They're into the feasibility stage there. It's really low grade, but big tons and special mineralogy, hazelwoodite dominant, which is a really high tenor nickel sulfide mineral, secondary nickel sulfide. So we put out all our results for the 2021 drilling we did on our bulk tonnage target there. So that's something investors can look up. And we'll decide what we want to do with the project. We don't need to do anything right now. We've got lots of credits. We can hold the ground for a considerable amount of time.
And how similar is it to Crawford?
Well, I mean, if you look at our press release, the last one issued a few weeks ago, which summarized all of the drilling results that we did about 8 holes in 2021. We're getting, 100 to 300 meter long intersections at, 0.25 to 0.3, sometimes up to 0.4 nickel, and with sulfur. So we're doing sulfur analyses as well. So the key is all about the metallurgy, mineralogy. And we think we've got the same rock types, geology, mineralogy. We just started a new round of applied or quantitative mineralogy on the 2021 drill core. So those results should be in hand in a couple of months, and that'll just give people more confidence that this is recoverable. What percentage of that nickel is recoverable? And so that's the key to these projects, is it's got to be pentlandite or hazelwoodite. In our case, we're thinking and looking like it's going to be mostly hazelwoodite.
And when you design a quantitative mineralogical study, you take a bunch of representative samples and you send them off to a university to get chem scan, and what kind of work do you get done?
We're using SGS, and they have a new set of technologies, but it's an instrument that's very much like the MLA or the QuemScan SEM, but a little more sophisticated, I think, on the image analysis and the actual mineralogical calculations that it does and can do. So that's something we're trying out, I guess, for the first time, but they've had success using this exactly with this type of deposit, this bulk nickel secondary style nickel sulfide, hazelwoodite, pentlandite dominant. So that's being done. Let's see. We did have one study done 20 years ago, and on this B zone, this bulk nickel sulfide target, and it was very positive. It showed a potential of recovering. Producing a 30% plus nickel con grade. So that's really the sweet spot in the market for these projects. Yeah, they're low grade. Yes, they're potentially big capex, but the long life mines, low cost, very sort of low strip ratio deposits because they're so wide. We've got the same kind of indicators that Crawford has. Of course, they're much more advanced than what we have at Bannockburn. So that's obviously the next step is resource drilling.
Good stuff. Really interesting. I did I got an expert to do a petrographic study This is years ago now. I think it was kind of 15 or 16 years ago. And he did a really good job. And all of the subsequent metallurgical test work just kind of confirmed what was established in that initial good quality bit of work. And I know it wasn't the latest fancy machine, and it was just a guy with a polished section and some thin sections. But when you get good petrographic work done, it can really help guide your thinking and your planning out your metallurgical test work further down the line.
Yes.
Dave, it's been a pleasure speaking to you. Can you, one last thing, could you just run me by the names of the key guys in your team? Because was it Larry and Ian, who were kind of on the technical side of the.
Yeah.
So
Carrie.
If you've got any more, so it's Carrie, and if you've got any more in the team, just could you mention them? Just kind of their core expertise. That'd be really helpful.
Yeah. So Carrie's, we mentioned him, VP of Exploration for Lithium. We've got Ian Ward, basically a metallurgist by training, but ran Micron Engineering. So he's going to take our Makwa Mayville project through the PEA and then the pre-feasibility. We've got Reed Keys, foremost expert, in fact, my PhD supervisor from the late 80s when I was doing my PhD in Australia at Melbourne Uni. He's doing technical consulting for nickel and PGE projects, world expert on both magmatic sulfide, nickel, and platinum metal deposits. And we've got Paul Stacey, a sort of geomatics database expert out of Ottawa, who's providing that critical support on data management and modeling, 3D modeling and software related to that. So those are kind of the key guys. We do have some other consultants that we bring in. Brian Young, experienced underground mine engineer I worked with at North American Palladium, has been helping us out at times. And then we're building a young team of geos in the sort of Winnipeg area to really be boots on the ground, core logging for our Makwa Mayville project. And so those guys, you'll hear about them, I guess, someday. But right now we've got them busy and they don't have time to talk like I do. And
no, it's good. It's good. And it's great for it's a great environment for young geologists to be graduating or kind of early career. My son's actually just applying to study geology at university.
I'll get him to send his resume.
No, he's applying for 4 universities. He's got another 3 years. He'll be out the back end in 3 years' time.
Yeah,
but yeah, no.
We hire summer students as well. So
good, great. Thank you very much. I'm really impressed. I'm also impressed by, dare I say it, the quality of your marketing materials, the website and the presentation, very well packaged. And I was also impressed that you put together a kind of a data pack ahead of this call. So thank you very much for your time and your everything you put into this.
Thank you very much, Merlin. It's great to be with everyone today, and go Grid.